Hello everyone, welcome to AS and A-Level Biology with Dr. Demi. I am Dr. Demi, and in this video I will be starting the A-Level Biology content. Before I go on, I just want to say a very big thank you to those of you who have subscribed to this channel. I was really surprised to see the number of people who subscribed because I really expected just maybe 20 of my students to do so. But I see that a lot of you have subscribed, and you've also requested more videos from me. So that really makes me believe that these videos are very helpful, and I am really excited. So I have decided to give into your requests and record the A-level biology content as well. As you might know, the A-level biology content is a bit longer. The chapters are more detailed, so it might take a while for all of the videos to come through, but I am going to try my best to at least do one chapter every 2 weeks maximum. It would probably take shorter than that, but I'm trying as much as possible to not get your hopes up too high. So yeah, in these videos, I'm just going to be covering the A-level content. Some of them are really detailed, and in the descriptions, I will also be including things like extra notes that I haven't put on the slides that you might find helpful, or just more detailed descriptions of anything that I discuss. If you look at the word cloud that I have put here on the slides, you will see that we are in for a very interesting ride because you can see words like muscles, and you can see phosphorylation, variation, chromosomes, rubisco, Spearman's correlation. These are some of the things that we are going to be working with in this syllabus. I am still using the exact same textbook, which is the AS and A-Level Biology course book by Mary Jones et al. If you want to find it, I have a screenshot of it in my very first video, which is chapter 1.1. So please make sure you have a look at it. And the first chapter for the A-Level Biology syllabus is respiration. So let's get into it. So like I said, we're going to be discussing respiration. And before I go in, I just want to say that you need to not fear this chapter at all. Many students get scared when they see the Krebs cycle because they start asking questions like, oh my goodness, do I have to know all of these names and all of those things? I promise you it is a lot easier than you think. So just relax, try to study, and just focus on what I am trying to explain. If you have any questions, as usual, please post them in the chat. Thanks to those of you who have highlighted like extra information in the comments. So I'm really excited for that, and I'm grateful because it's sort of inspiring some form of interaction, and I'm grateful for that. So if you have any questions or any extra information that you want to share, please post them in the comments as well. So when I start off this chapter, I usually like to start off with students just understanding what energy is about. So in this video, really, we're going to be discussing like, why do we need energy? What do we use for energy? How does ATP work? Because we know ATP is the energy currency of the cell. So how does it work, and what does it do exactly? How does it yield energy? Those are the things I will cover in this video before we go on to the full in-depth respiration itself. So we need energy simply for work. Work in a living organism like ourselves includes things like anabolic reactions. So when we say a reaction is anabolic, we simply mean that it's a building up of complex molecules from simpler ones. So building up of lipids, of proteins, of polysaccharides. These are all things that require energy. We require energy for active transport, which is an example of which is the sodium-potassium pump. And I'm going to show you just an illustration of that at the end of this video. We also require energy for things like our mechanical work, so like muscle contractions, the fact that we're able to move, able to run, able to twitch our eyes when we receive a stimulus, or even when we don't. All of these things are things that require energy in the body. And also in some of the sea animals like marine life, you would find things like bioluminescence, because some of them glow in the dark. Some of them have electrical discharge. These are all things that require energy. And how do we use energy? So the question I often ask students when I show them this slide is, I say, when you're cold and you wrap a blanket around yourself, what exactly is giving you warmth? Is it the blanket, or are you the one producing the heat? And sometimes students tend to think about it for a while. The answer is that you are producing the heat, and the blanket is helping to keep that column of heat around your body. So we use energy in the form of heat to maintain our body temperature, and that's because we are endotherms. So we produce the energy from within ourselves, and then we can conserve that energy by wrapping something around ourselves so that the heat doesn't escape. So for that reason, we are called endotherms. There are animals that are ectotherms, and they are warmed with energy from outside their body. So things like snakes, turtles, lizards are all warmed from outside their body. So the energy currency of the cell is ATP, and the full spelling of that is adenosine triphosphate. Students tend to confuse this with adenine. It's not adenine, it's adenosine. So here, ATP, as you might be able to see, so I'm just going to do the same thing I've always done by just, what's it called, annotating on the slide. So as you can see, ATP is this over here. So you have adenosine, which is adenine combined with a ribose sugar, and you have 3 phosphate groups over here. And the way ATP produces energy is by breaking the bonds between the phosphate groups. As you can see, there's a bond here, there's another bond here, and there's another bond here between the 3rd phosphate and the ribose. And by breaking these bonds, we are able to produce energy. Now, when you remove the first phosphate group, so I'm just going to erase so that you can see again what I'm doing. When you remove the first phosphate group, which would be this one, and that means you're breaking this bond over here, you release 30.5 kilojoules per mole of energy, and then you form adenosine diphosphate. So the reason this is called triphosphate is because it has 3 phosphate groups. So when you remove one phosphate, you're left with 2 phosphate groups, and that's diphosphate. And when you break off the second phosphate, over there, you form adenosine monophosphate, which basically indicates that there's just one phosphate. That also releases 30.5 kilojoules per mole of energy. However, when you break off the last one, which is between phosphate and ribose, you only release 14.2 kilojoules per mole of energy. And the reason for this is simply that the bonds between the phosphate groups have more energy contained in them than the bond between ribose or between adenosine and the last phosphate. And so for that reason, we don't get a lot of energy when we break off the last phosphate. So the energy released, again, just illustrating here, you can see ATP. When you remove one phosphate from ATP, it's usually written this way. So always look at where the arrow is pointing. This is a reversible reaction. For those of you who might not be taking chemistry, where you see a double, what's it called, double arrow, it's basically showing that it's a reversible reaction. So if we want to make ATP, we need to combine adenosine diphosphate and a phosphate group to make ATP. And when we break down ATP, we yield the exact same thing. And the breakdown of ATP to ADP gives us 30 kilojoules per mole, as I said earlier. And breaking ADP to AMP would also give us 30 kilojoules per mole. But breaking AMP to adenosine would only give us 14.2 kilojoules per mole. And the most energy is released when we have the phosphate bonds being broken and not necessarily the bond between the phosphate and the adenosine. ATP, like you might know, is the energy currency of the cell. The reason why it is so good is because it is a small molecule. It is water soluble. It is easily transported around the cell. And for that reason, it is easy for it to be used very quickly, especially when we need energy urgently. Extra energy that we make from ATP is converted to thermal energy. So you might notice, for example, that if you're exercising or you go for a run, after a while you begin to sweat and you begin to heat up. That's mostly a combination of respiration, ATP release, and homeostasis, which are things that we will address in the syllabus, so worry not. When we say something is an energy currency molecule, it simply means that these are molecules that donate energy. So ATP is an energy currency molecule. It is not an energy storage molecule. An energy storage molecule are molecules that can store energy, such as glucose or glycogen or even starch or triglycerides, which are often used for long-term storage. Glucose and sucrose, by the way, are for short-term energy storage. So please know the difference between these two things. So when we talk about making ATP, we can make ATP from two different ways. We can make it by reorganizing like chemical bonds during steps like glycolysis and Krebs cycle, which you'll see. And we can also make it by this process here called chemiosmosis. I don't want to go into chemiosmosis in detail in this video because we have another video where I do. And basically, but I just want to let you know that chemiosmosis involves the transport of electrons in the mitochondria and in the chloroplast if you're dealing with plants. And by moving those electrons around, you're able to release energy that is then used to form the ATP that you need to form. It also involves the transport of protons. So I don't want to go into too much detail here because I think in our next video, we will be able to discuss it. But before I end off, I just want to show you an example of ATP. So remember when we discussed in chapter 4 all the different types of transport systems that are within cells, we mentioned active transport. And I hope that you recall that active transport is when you transport molecules from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. In other words, you're going against the concentration gradient. And so what this means is that you're taking molecules from where they are in already they are low and you're taking them to a region where they're more abundant. An example of this is the sodium-potassium pump. As you might be able to see here, these are potassium molecules. So I'm just going to annotate again. These are potassium molecules, the round-shaped ones over there, and these are the sodium molecules. And you can see that the sodium molecules are moving outwards. Just if you follow this arrow over here, they're moving outwards even though they are in high concentration on the outside, while the potassium molecules are coming inwards even though they are in high concentration on the inside. Something about the sodium potassium pump that you must know is that for every 3 sodium ions that move out, 2 potassium ions are pumped in. And that might mean nothing to you now, but when you get to, or when we get to coordination, for example, or some of the other chapters that we go into later on, you will see why this is important. So that's it from me for this video. This again is just an introductory video, but I hope that it has sort of set you in the mind space for respiration, because when we go in the next video, it is a little bit more detailed and I don't want you to feel afraid of it at all. It is really interesting, and once you're able to understand how the steps work, everything comes together nicely for you. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for subscribing again. I really enjoy the engagement that I've had from some of you, and please continue to engage in the comments, and I will post the next video very soon. Thank you. Goodbye.